Hey guys, it's Gameface here and welcome to Make Man United Great Again, a mini-series which I've done a couple of times now on my channel with other teams such as AC Milan and Arsenal. Today we're going to be with Manchester United, and for those of you who don't understand the mini-series, here are the rules. The rules are very simple. First of all, signings don't have to be realistic. Secondly, you have 4 seasons to turn the team around. Third, aim to win the quadruple in just 1 season. And then fourth, sim all games but the Champions League final. So I have 4 seasons to try and win the Champions League of Manchester United, as well as obviously transforming the whole side as well. So it's a big task that we've got ahead of us. Hopefully we can transform the team into something really good. This is the current side that I'm working with. Obviously the usual Man United team that you'd expect me to be working with here. 4-2-3-1 formation is the formation I'm going to go with, just to try and get a few more attacking players in better positions. And I didn't waste any time. I got straight onto transfers and trying to bring in different players here. Man.Utd was the first guy that I went for. £34 million was the initial bid that I went with. It took a little bit of negotiating, but eventually a deal was agreed at £40 million. And that meant that once we decided on the contract and got everything sorted out, Umtiti would eventually become a Manchester United player, and hopefully play on the left-hand side of centre-back for us in a position I felt really needed to be covered. So as you can see, he does join us. £40 million he cost us. He goes alongside Eric Bailly now in defence, and it's a good initial signing for us. On to other transfers. Alexandra being the next player. Obviously very keen to try and improve our defence as much as possible. 86 rated, really wanted to try and bring him in, and eventually we did get ourselves a deal agreed. Took again a little bit of time, but £57 million was the bid we went with. It then got rejected, we kept having to go back and forth. 59 was the next offer, and that was eventually accepted. So I was very happy about that. Eventually we got into the transfer negotiations, and we did manage to agree a contract as well. Again, took a little bit of negotiating, getting the figures right. They wanted bonuses. We didn't want to give them bonuses initially, but we gave them a signing on bonus as well as at a decent wage, and he was another player to join us. 86 rated, and I think 2 defensive signings I'm really happy with. Improves us massively at the back, which is something we had to try and do. And I'm going to try and get you to do it as well. The next signing is going to be Carvajal, who I'm going to go for as our right back. Really looking forward to trying to use him as much as possible in that right back position, try and strengthen that area as much as possible as well. And eventually a deal was agreed, and he also joins us as well. So bringing in 3 defenders very early on in this transfer window, I think was key in order to give us a very solid back line going into this first season. The next player to try and sign was a midfielder, so slowly moving through the team here. We're going to bring in this centre mid, obviously very well known, being linked with United in real life a lot, and from Lazio. So we could get a deal agreed. It's going to be quite a lot of money, but I think definitely worth it in the long term. I felt he was going to be a player to be very important for us for a few seasons to come. He joins us, 83 rated, and Michael Carrick departs obviously as well, trying to bring in the youth now, get rid of some of the older players, and that is exactly what we're trying to do with Fellaini here as well. So as again trying to get a deal agreed for him, and eventually he was sold, and we got a decent amount of money for him. Obviously we have to try and get rid of as many players as possible, raise money, and also try and get in some players to be able to replace those guys. Then moved on to the first Premier League game of the season against West Ham, beat them 4-1, so I thought it's a positive sign of things to come. Phil Jones gets sold as well amongst all of that, and then we play a game against Swansea. We're losing the game 1-0, and it finishes 1-0, so a little bit inconsistent here. Ashley Young amongst all that also gets sold as well. We beat Blackburn here in the Carabao Cup, and then we move back onto some more transfers. Juan Mata is a player that we're trying to negotiate a deal in order for him to leave. A few different clubs came in for him actually. Eventually managed to get something that was matched. £31 million was matched there. Moved on to the game against Leicester, and then we went on to trying to sign an attacker. So also went for Belotti, tried to sign him up and trying to get him in. Got a deal agreed eventually, and 86 grand a week was enough to try and convince him to get into the club. He joins us, and we get ourselves a really good sign there. 83 rated. Looking forward to having him in and around the squad. Juan Mata was sold eventually as well. He leaves the club unfortunately, but again it was trying to raise money, bring in new younger players, and Kovacic was the next guy that was going to go for. £37.5 million was agreed, and again we managed to agree something for his wage. 150 grand a week was our initial offer, and it was once again agreed by the player and his agent. So another signing for us, loads and loads of players coming in here, having to really try and tear the team apart and bring in loads of young players. Blind also left as well, so a lot of these older players leaving the club now, and it's a chance for us to move on into January and hopefully sim our way there and have a good first half of the season. Things looked not so good though, because I noticed we lost to Everton. We've gone out of the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, and we find ourselves in the Champions League in 3rd place in our group as well, so not good. We go out of the Champions League at a very early stage, don't get past the group stage, and then in the Premier League to make it even worse, we're 5th. So it's all going terribly wrong in this first season. Obviously we've got a long time to try and correct this team, but certainly so far it's not looking good. Jesse Lingard, a bid in for him, we managed to get that deal agreed, and eventually he would leave us for £36 million. I was curious to try and get some money in, try and change the team around a little bit and make sure that we could get in some better players. And this was one of the guys I was going to go for. Jorginho coming in as our midfielder here. So again, try and add more depth into our squad. Chris Smalling leaves us, Darmian leaves us, loads and loads of players departing, but we're making sure to try and replace them with better quality players like Gimenez. He's the guy that's going to join us for the start of next season. So this is a pre-contract arrival, I believe, and so he will join us at the start of the second season. Another player we're trying to get in for now, though, is Vertonghen. £30 million was the amount that we were able to sign him for. Obviously very impressed to try and get him in. It's quite a lot of money, and so I didn't even anticipate him being at the club for very long either due to his age, but I felt it was really important to get a solid defender in the side, with obviously Chris Smalling leaving us. He's 85 rated, and so I was pretty happy with that deal. We weren't so happy with going out in the FA Cup, though, to Burton. I think that pretty much summed up our first half of the season, really, with us in charge, and so I was a little bit worried that that was going to continue for the rest of the season. I thought we'd find out now by sitting towards the end of the season. Now we've got through the January transfer window, and I felt maybe it was going to be a consistent season, and actually we finished second, so it actually ended up being a better second half of the season by far than what we'd done in the first half, but obviously it wasn't enough to get us anything really. FA Cup we went out of in a very early stage, and then obviously the Carabao Cup we went out in the quarterfinals for Chelsea, which is not so good. We wanted to try and get a little bit further. Champions League we went out in the group stage, and so we didn't really do anything. We went out in the round of 16 in the Europa League to make it even worse, and so our first season has been really, really poor. Man United board not happy with us at all. Even though we brought in some really good players, the results haven't really reflected that, so it's very, very strange for our first season. We have just about kept our job, though, luckily. They said they want to give us another go, and so we head into season 2. So let's head straight into season 2 now. Let's try and get in some signings, hopefully try and bring in some better players to produce better results. Obviously Gimenez joining us, who we tried to sign in January. We successfully did that, and so I moved on to again trying to improve the squad as much as I could. Going to sign Danny Rose here, about £15 million I think was agreed, a decent amount of money I felt for him. Then moved on to his wage, and again we managed to agree a wage with him pretty quickly, 130 grand a week for him, and he became our first signing. Again, pretty keen to try and improve our defence, clearly that was an issue last season. Valencia leaves us though, so also pretty keen to try and get some of the older players out of the club still. Firstly game of the season we were winning at Southampton 2-1, which I was very happy about, and then we go and spend some serious money on bringing in a really solid midfielder. Verratti, £120 million was agreed by PSG. We move on to his wage, 190 grand a week was agreed for that deal, and he becomes our latest signing. Obviously we'd run out of money at this point, so we were never really going to be able to sign too many more players after that deal, but a really, really important player to bring in for the future, and so we move on to the January transfer window virtually straight after that, and so I'm very curious to see how we got on in the first half of this season. This time round, those new signings surely must have done something. Let's wait and see where we end up in the league table. 11th. Okay, at the halfway point, that's not good. Oh, nearly the halfway point anyway. And so I was again a little bit worried. We didn't have a lot of money to spend once again because we spent so much on Verratti, but it seemed very, very strange. We've gone out of so many different cups again. We found ourselves still in the Champions League though, luckily, but we are still out of a couple of different cups. So we had to again try and strengthen, but we didn't have that much money, obviously spending so much on Verratti. We take a look at City here. We try and sign him up and we get a deal agreed eventually, and he comes in as another midfielder for us. We have a lot of players though departing amongst all this, so City does come in, but it's important to be able to replace these players that have been departing. Then I moved on to Falcao, who seemed like a strange one, but I'm keen to try and get in a centre forward that wasn't always wanting to start every match, and he seemed like the best player to fit that. I wanted a player to fit the squad, and so I went for Falcao. Romero leaves us as well. We also have Rojo leaving us on a pre-contract agreement, so a few players departing. We're obviously trying to bring in players as well, and our squad was a decent enough size to be able to compete this season, so I was a little bit shocked that we found ourselves where we did, but by the end of the season we found ourselves in 5th place, out of the semi-finals of the FA Cup to Scunthorpe. Obviously not very good. Once again we find ourselves out of the Champions League, which isn't good as well. Didn't do very well in the Carabao Cup, and didn't do very well at all in Europe. You can see there we go out in the round of 16 of the Champions Cup. So another really disappointing season, a second season that we again had to use as a building block. The board saying virtually the same thing as last season, where they expected better results. We didn't manage to give it to them, and so we had another very disappointing season. So I've decided to breeze over the first 2 seasons. We'll move on to season 3 now. Season 3 actually does get a little bit better for us. I'm hoping that we can get ourselves some better players in as well. We're obviously in a current situation where we actually have a really good starting 11, so it doesn't really make sense the results that we're getting. You can see the starting 11 there. We have so many really talented players that did seem very bizarre to be getting the sort of results that we were. And so we just went on to sign more players. We went on to spend more money. What else can you do? We're trying to bring in even better players, and so we did that with Mats Hummels. Matic left us, and as part of that deal, we eventually got it agreed. The wages obviously inevitably going to be quite a lot. 240 grand was the bid that I went with, and it was eventually agreed, and Matt Hummels joins us to try and strengthen our defence even more than what we have done in the first 2 seasons. So obviously I was very happy with that signing. An 89 rated player is really good, but we had to again continue to try and build on this team going forward as well. So Dele Alli was the next player. I wanted a centre attacking mid that played in exactly that position. A lot of money was spent on him, but I think worth it again because he's such a good talented player, really young. He's 88 rated as well, so I was very happy to sign him up, and he joined our squad to play the centre attacking mid position. Timothy Fosu-Mensah left us as well. That was unfortunately one way, he just didn't grow enough really to compete in the squad. Sanchez was also sold to again try and make way for other talent coming in. Managed to get a deal sorted out for Kimmich, another right back coming in, again looking to try and strengthen every single position. Even though we had Carvajal, I wanted another right back that was equally as strong, and that's exactly what we did. We signed Kimmich, we got him in, and he's another good signing for us. That's the starting 11 I was using here. This is an insane team. How we're not winning stuff, I have no idea. It had to happen at some point, and that's exactly what I was hoping we could try and do in this 3rd and 4th season. Now moving on to Alaba, the next player, getting rid of Danny Rose, a player that we'd recently just signed in the last couple of years. We decided to try and bring in Alaba as part of obviously trying to strengthen our backline even further, and eventually a deal was agreed. We managed to go onto his contract, we managed to sort something out. 200 grand a week was the offer that I decided to submit, and that was what was accepted, and before I knew it, Alaba had joined us. And that was it for the summer transfer window, spending a lot of cash once again, and therefore moving on to the January transfer window and hoping that we'd had a better first half of the season this time round than we had in the last couple of seasons. Let's wait and see where we find ourselves in the league table. 2nd place, which is very good, but 11 points behind Arsenal, not so good. Arsenal are top of the league, only losing 1 game in 18 so far this season, and so I know that I had to try and get going a little bit better. We found ourselves still in the Cups, we found ourselves top of our group in the Europa League, which was good. We also decided to sell Vertonghen in order to make way for new signings coming in as well. Another player I decided to get rid of was Belotti, especially when Bayern Munich came in and were clearly prepared to spend a lot of money on him. We accepted a bid of £120 million and we moved on to the Manchester derby. Were we able to beat Manchester City? It was always going to be one of those sort of games where it was going to be very tricky, but we did come away with a 2-0 victory, so I was very happy about that. Belotti was sold. We get ourselves £113.5 million, an incredible amount of money that had to be reinvested back into the team. Griezmann was the guy I'd go for. I thought I'd go for someone equally as good, and so 90 overall player I went with. And again, eventually a deal was agreed for him, and he was to join the club. We had to try and strengthen as much as possible. Griezmann joins us, obviously with Belotti departing, and I think he joined us for over £100 million in the end. Wanted to bring in another striker. Obviously Falcao was a player that wasn't really contributing as much, and we had to bring in a 3rd striker. We went with Diego Costa. He looks like a really good player once again. Obviously coming into his older years now, but still I think good enough overall wise to try and impact the squad. Obviously not going to be getting into the team too often, but he joined us, 84 rated. Diego Costa, as much of a bizarre deal that is, I decided to bring him in anyway. And before we knew it, that was it for the January transfer window. Again, we ran out of money, had to move on into the end of the season. We found ourselves in 2nd place. We had narrowed the gap to just 6 points now behind Arsenal, who went on to win the Premier League title. So we are certainly improving, but 2nd place doesn't win you any titles. We found ourselves out of the round of 16 of the Emirates FA Cup, and we won the Carabao Cup though, so we did win a trophy in this 3rd season. It's about time as well, and we found ourselves in the Europa League out. So yeah, not very good once again. Obviously got through to the round of 32, I think, that time round, and went out to Real Sociedad, and so again, very disappointing in the Europa League. And that meant that was it for the 3rd season. We finally won a trophy, but still not good enough. We got one final season in order to try and win as much as possible, ideally winning the Champions League as well. That's what we try and set out to do. We've transformed the team so far, but clearly it needs further improvements, and we're going to have to try and do that. Let's crack on with season 4. So straight into things with season 4, looking again to try and bring as many talented players to the club as possible, but also get rid of those that aren't good enough. Siri left us very early on there, bringing in Coutinho, matching his release clause of £117 million, trying to sign Neymar. He was a little bit too expensive for us. We went on to Coutinho, and eventually a deal was agreed, and before we knew it, we had a 90 rated player in our attack very, very quickly. Then we moved on to another midfielder. Obviously we had to try and bring in another centre mid with Siri leaving, and so I went for this guy who was at West Ham. Never really heard of him before. We did spend £39 million on signing him, and I felt like he was a good fit for the team. I looked at his stats, he looked very talented, decent age as well, and so eventually he joined our side as well. A very good player for us, and so I was looking forward to trying to get him into the squad as much as possible. And then I had to sim a little bit further because we'd sort of well, ran out of money, so we went into January, and so we again had to see how we got on. We found ourselves in 3rd place, 11 points behind Spurs. Is not so good as our first half of the season. Played a few games, had to try and sim them ourselves rather than go through the calendar. Make sure we got as many victories as possible to try and get as close to Spurs as possible. Beat a few teams here, obviously going there through into the next round of the FA Cup. Beating Barnsley here as well in the Carabao Cup, although eventually we got ourselves a 4-0 victory, so I was very happy about that. Next leg of the FA Cup, the next round of FA Cup against Middlesbrough, and eventually got ourselves just a 1-0 victory there. So I was having to try and play these games as much as possible, sim them as much as possible myself, rather than through the calendar. We made our way to the end of the season, and we found ourselves in the Champions League final somehow. I have no idea how we managed it. We seem to have a really, really good 4th season because we've also won the Premier League title as well. Clearly those games that we tried to sim in January helped build some sort of momentum because we found ourselves obviously going out of the FA Cup, but also managing to win the Carabao Cup again this season. So we've done so far the double, obviously win the league title and the Carabao Cup, and now we have the Champions League final to play here against Sporting Lisbon. Let's sort out the team, let's crack on the game. Can we make it a treble to finish off the 4th season? It's been a really, really strange turnaround for this 4th season. The first 3 seasons weren't particularly great, but this 4th one has been good so far. Can we make it even better? Here we go. In 5 minutes into this game, Martial go for a cross into the back post and headed in by the midfielder. It's only the youngster, the guy that we brought in from Lazio very early on in this. He's been at the club maybe 3 or 4 seasons now, and he's scored at the back post. A really good header. Look at this. It's Lukaku who plays it there to Martial. He picks it out perfectly. Look at that. He nodded in. We're 1-0 up very early on in this game. And we again going forward here. Rashford looking to try and get a cross in if he can. Lukaku's in the box and he heads it past the goalkeeper, doubling our lead. And it's a really good start to this game. Just inside 20 minutes, we've got a 2-goal advantage already here against Sporting. And we've started off this game really well. Champions League looks like it might well be ours to lose right now. Sporting Lisbon coming forward. It's a good save by the goalkeeper. And it's not actually David De Gea that I've got in goal for this game. He's injured for the match. So we have had to bring in Pereira, I think, to play in goal. But we found ourselves 2-0 up here at half-time. Into the second half, and look at that. It's Savic once again who scores, and it's a 3rd goal added to the scoreline just inside the first couple of minutes of the second half. We're running away with this game at the moment, and we're making the Champions League final look really easy. Although it's against Sporting Lisbon, so I don't really know what you expect. You kind of expect to be beating this sort of team, if you're totally honest. But that wasn't going to be without reply. Sporting Lisbon come forward just a couple of minutes later and slot home a goal to make things still quite interesting. That reduces our advantage to just 2 goals now. It's 3-1. Luckily, we do still find ourselves in the lead in this game, and we're hoping to try and add another to the scoreline. Ali runs forward here. Great touch from him. Takes it around the defender and scores, making it 4-1. Gives us our 3-goal advantage back here against Sporting. Very happy to see that happen. And we're again starting to run away with this game once again. 4-1. Dele Alli adds to the scoreline. Very impressed by that. Obviously gives us a great advantage. And so I decided to make some changes, bringing on Griezmann to try him out, as well as a couple of other guys as well, including Coutinho. So I was hoping we could end the game strong. Not too much longer left now into the final 20 minutes. Griezmann shooting. What a save by the goalkeeper, Patricio. And we have a chance here for Sporting, and they score it 4-2. They've pulled one back. There's 10 minutes to go. They still need a couple more goals, so it looks unlikely at this stage of the game. We run forward ourselves. Rashford looking to try and add a 5th to the scoreline. Playing it across to Lukaku, off the post. Rashford follows up, and the linesman has called offside, unfortunately. We don't quite get the 5th goal, unfortunately. But there we go, another really good chance for us. And that is how it finishes. We win the Champions League, and we get ourselves a really good victory there against Sporting. 17 shots, 16 on target. Fantastic result, obviously, there. And we do the treble this season, the 4th season. Unfortunately, not able to win all 4 trophies, which I sometimes like to try and do, but we did get ourselves all 3 trophies that we could. Obviously, I think going out and not getting the FA Cup was a little bit disappointing, but again, one of those sort of situations where it's very, very competitive. It's very tough to have the squad to be able to cope with all 4 competitions, but I'm very impressed that we managed to win ourselves 3 trophies in this season. Also, the first few seasons weren't particularly great. Eventually, though, we did manage to construct a team that was able to win 3 trophies, 3 big trophies as well in that 4th season, and so I'm very happy. And overall, I think we did manage to achieve what our objective is, and that was obviously to make Man United great again. Thank you all so much for watching, guys. If we could try and hit 75 likes, then I'd really appreciate it. Also, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already as well, and that'd be absolutely fantastic too. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.